Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Reap the Spoils. I'm Mark Sullivan.
I'm Delaila Lugo.
I'm Jason Kwasnicki.
Reap the Spoils is a monthly spoiler cast. We play a game, and then we convene to talk about it pretty much every month. Like, try to get this out. I want to say the first half of the month is now like the cadence that we're doing this. It's never consistent. It doesn't matter.
Depends when the game releases.
Yeah, really. If it's a new game, like we're kind of driven by that release date. But anyway, monthly spoiler cast. If you haven't played the game we're talking about, I highly suggest you go play that game. We are going to spoil it. We don't want to spoil it for someone that hasn't played it. And most of the games we talk about, I think, are worth experiencing. Unbridled without our ruining it for your first time.
Yeah, as a general rule of thumb, we don't really do shitty games on this podcast. Well, I would say we did one, but
don't.
in general.
I'm like, really? They're coming from you?
I was hoping he would get through that and forget about the one game that he didn't like very much. But anyway, well, that's funny coming from you, actually, because there's a lot of games you don't like. We're almost 2 minutes into this. We haven't said the game. Delilah, what's the game we're playing? What's the game we played and we're talking about?
Let's let Jason introduce it. He never does anymore.
That's because I usually have you introduce the game and then Jason. Wait, do I have it backwards? Maybe Jason. What game are we talking about?
We are talking about the Shadow of the Colossus.
The Shadow of the Colossus. The singular shadow.
I love that soundtrack.
I love how
so
he always has to sing. I love it. It's so gorgeous. Yeah, we're talking about Shadow of the Colossus. Game released on the PS2. Pretty much close to the end of the PS2. Well, I shouldn't say that because the console life cycles, they always last a few years after their successors come out. This was in the latter half of the PS2's life cycle. But it's a critical and long time, like, influential darling, and we're going to talk all about that today. Are we ready for Oh, did you want to say something, Delilah?
I was just going to say, it's honestly one of those games that if you like video games, it's kind of a must play. Unlike like every game that we talked about, there are some of them, but I feel like the Shadow of Colossus is something you have to play.
And it's not a game you have to walk away from liking. If you walk away from Shadow of the Colossus and you don't like it, that's okay. But it is one of, like you said, it's one of those games that it's like a rite of passage.
Yeah.
At this point, it's like a game that everyone should experience one way or the other. But enough of that. We'll talk more about that momentarily. Are we ready for a history lesson on Shadow of the Colossus?
Mm-hmm.
Jason nods silently. As Wander would when Dormin would give him his next target.
Agro!
All right, so history of Shadow of the Colossus. It started. So there was a little game, a little game by a team at Sony Japan Studio. Rest in peace.
I was just about to say this. Yeah.
Recently, we got word that Sony is seemingly phasing out Japan Studio, which is a shame, to say the least. But there was a little fledgling team at Japan Studio that made a little critical darling. Not a huge commercial success by any means, but a little critical darling called Eco. It's a game that's really near and dear to my heart. I don't know if you guys have played it.
I never beat it. I need to. We'll probably have to do an episode on that one too.
I would love to do an episode on Eco. But anyway, Eco came out, I want to say, in 2001. And it's a hugely influential game, just like the game we're about to talk about today, in a lot of ways. I don't want to talk too much about Eco, but that game came out, was critically lauded, and a huge influence to a lot of other developers and a lot of other people. Naturally, with the game being critically successful at the very least, it did sell decently. They were already working on greenlighting their next project, which was called Nico. Why was it called Nico? Ni in Japanese is two, and Eco was the name of their first game. there for Nico. That was the project name for the supposed sequel. There was a tech demo showed at DICE Summit 2003, and what that showed was a bunch of masked, horned boys that were riding on horses, attacking and fighting a Colossus. And these all like lean into what the creator Fumito Ueda really wanted to elicit in this game. First of all, he wanted a realistic physics engine. He has a very distinct art style, and he really wanted to make a game that had never been done before. Spoilers, I guess we could start spoilers here. There are no conventional enemies in this game. It's 16 boss fights. That's it. It's just 16 boss fights. And he didn't want anything else in the game other than those 16 boss fights, because to have standard enemies in the game would be something that's been done before. He wanted to create something that had never been done before. And he wanted to have kind of a subversive take on the boss fight. And we'll talk about how he achieves that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but not only had it not been done before at that time, but it hasn't been done again, right? I can't.
There was an indie game called
Titan Souls.
Titan Souls, yeah.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
that was pretty specifically trying to like evoke the Shadow of the Colossus.
The creator flat out called this like the big inspiration behind that game. And this game has largely inspired a lot of games like it.
It should also be noted that Ueda and Team Ico, whichever way. It's weird because the Japanese say Ico. No, if you listen to Ueda, they call themselves Ico.
They've called it.
And then Ico, yeah.
They've confirmed it's
weird.
Ico.
Oh, yes. Whatever. But anyway, they have like in terms of game design, they constantly talk, or they did. Now they're being phased out. But they would always talk about their quote-unquote reductionist philosophy in terms of game design, and how they always wanted to go against the grain at the time. You know, Grand Theft Auto was just becoming what we know it is today. You know, large open worlds, all this shit getting thrown in. So I think San Andreas actually came out the same year this game did.
I think that's true, yeah.
So it's worth taking that into account as well when looking at the mindset behind, you know, the design of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these were kind of the priorities they had in creating the game. The game released October 18th, 2005 on the PlayStation 2 computer entertainment system. It later did get an HD remaster for the PS3, developed by Blue Point Games.
Hey.
It was actually it was Eco and Shadow of the Colossus HD remaster.
Mm-hmm.
It was both of those games bundled into one. That came out September 2011. I remember getting that game for my birthday that year.
Yeah.
I was very happy. It was one of my earliest PS3 games. And yeah, I emphasized Blue Point because a couple years later, E3 2017, a remake of Shadow of the Colossus was announced, also being developed by Blue Point.
Mm-hmm.
And that released on February 6th, 2018.
And each of those remakes did something more for the game each time. Like, I was like, how much more good looking can they make this game be? And each time they did.
I do want to talk about that. We'll get to that later. I want to talk more about the game proper before I start going into my my comparison track, because I played through the game. I played through the remake for the first time like just last week. I hadn't played it yet. I got it when it came out and just never got around to it. So I finally got around to it. And then I decided to go back. I did something crazy. I hooked up my PS2 and I went back and I played through it on PS2.
Oh, wow.
And then after that, I took
the remaster.
I took down my PS2. I hooked up my PS3 and I played through the remaster.
Wow. All the work that he puts into this, guys.
Oh, I am so tired of this game. I love it, but I'm so tired of playing it.
Yeah.
I probably played through it I want to say like 8 times just in the span of a week.
And then in a week they're gonna announce a PS5 version.
I swear to God.
As an addendum, I feel so old. I can remember that like before they even announced like the remake for this game, I'm pretty sure The Last Guardian was announced. The third game from Team Ico.
Wasn't it out already?
That was out already.
Was it?
That finally
before the original, before the PS3 remake?
Oh no.
Yeah. I'm saying The Last Guardian was announced for PS3 before this remake.
That is true.
And it would be like 7 years until it came out to PS4.
Yeah. I think The Last Guardian was announced in 2009.
Yeah, it leaked, I think, even before that.
Maybe. And then the Last Guardian finally came out came out and released I want to say December 2016. It finally came. And that was after years of silence.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Years of silence. And that studio, I think Fumito Ueda wasn't even technically with Sony anymore. I think he had broken off and started his own development company, but he still helped with the development and made sure that the game came out. Obviously, it was like it was his child. He was kind of obligated to see it through, short of canceling it outright. But anyway, so yeah, that's the history lesson. What do you say we jump in talking about the game?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to start off real quick just talking about the opening before we get into the ending, because really when we're talking about major bits of plot, it's really just the beginning of the game and the end of the game.
There's every other word of dialogue is Agro.
There's like little bits in between, but nothing like too important that we can't just talk about in a sentence or two. So the game opens, and this is something interesting I kind of forgot about. The game opens, and usually you don't see like the game open until you click new game.
Mm-hmm.
You load into a menu and you click new game, and then it opens. No, that first cutscene that happens when you just boot up the game and it starts up, that's the beginning of the game.
Yeah.
And that's like or it's not like pretty important, but it helps you get into the mood of what you're about to experience. The swooping music, walking under the moonlight around these treacherous mountains with your horse, going over that really long bridge, and the camera pans out. On the originals, the camera pans out and you see the stretch of that bridge and the Shrine of Worship, and there's your menu. And when you press new game, it goes into him going into the shrine from that screen. And it's pretty similar in the remake. That opening that opening scene, that opening sequence before you actually select that you want to play a new game, it's important, right? Or at least it sets the tone, it sets the mood, especially with the music, which is, I think, core to the experience of this game. It really helps give you an idea of what's to come, and I really like that. I really like that that plays out first. You boot up the game, and that's the first thing you see, and you have to sit there and wait for that.
Yeah, you see the bird, which is like ostensibly the bird is supposed to be like the camera of the game.
Yeah.
Whenever the camera sweeps around outside when you're riding through the open terrain, you see the hawks or sparrow, whatever, swoops in and out.
That's an interesting way to think about it.
That's the way I always saw it, because it's the bird is the first thing you see and it's the last thing you see.
Continuing on, so yeah, what we get in the exposition of this game when Wander, as you find, you don't know Wander, you don't know anyone's names really except for like Agro and Lord Imon's name. You don't know them until the credits, which I find really interesting.
So, I didn't even look at the credits. I didn't know his name until I looked it up.
Yeah. Oh, another thing I guess I should have added in the history lesson. This game in Japan wasn't called Shadow of the Colossus. It was called Wander and the Colossus.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so that's how they... Okay.
Yeah.
Which would have been a perfect name. I think that name's better than Shadow of the Colossus.
I think it's a difference of a Japanese release and North American release. They probably felt Shadow of the Colossus would resonate better than Wander and the Colossus.
Yeah, no, most definitely, it's probably a marketing thing.
Yeah.
But like I feel like it fits the aesthetic of the game in general better. But that's just me.
But yeah, Wander comes to this shrine, and he goes up to this almost stone bed, and removes dramatically this cloth, and you find that he is carrying a girl.
A dead girl.
Yeah. And he goes he turns around because these shadowy figures appear before him. If you played Eco, you'll recognize them. And he takes out the sword, and they dissipate, and this otherworldly being with two voices starts speaking down to him. And this is the only time I also find it interesting outside of Agro. This is the only time Wander actually talks in the game.
I wanted to ask you about that because you played all three versions. I don't remember in the original Wander referring to him specifically as Dormin. Like, I don't remember them being as explicit as they were in this remake, where Dormin tells him there's a price to pay and all that, and like it seems like they added a lot of dialogue that wasn't in the original.
I'm 99% sure it was all the same.
Okay.
Across all versions. Which, yeah, I kind of was surprised too, but at least that it was. I don't remember it being that explicit. But he does still keep it very vague, Dormin. And we also see that cheesy shot of like the mask over like the world map talking about about the Forbidden Lands, like no one's allowed to go there. And it's pretty cheesy, and that gives us what we need to hear about the place that Wander just wandered into. But Dormin tells him that, you want to resurrect that girl, that sword, you could probably do it. I need you to go slay these beasts for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I can bring her back to life. And that's pretty much all the exposition we're given. And throughout the game, every single time you kill a Colossus, Dormin just tells you where the next one is, and he gives you a very cryptic clue.
Yeah.
And then you're in the game. So I want to talk about this, and the conclusions we could draw, because we don't really know what Wander's relation to Mono, as we find out in the in the credits. Her name is Mono. We don't really know what their relation is. Are they in love? Did he just feel her death was unjust? Because we find out she was sacrificed. And sacrifice is a huge theme in both Eco and Shadow of the Colossus. Mm-hmm. We find out that she was sacrificed, and he brings her here to bring her back to life. How do you guys feel about that? Especially given that what he's willing to do, the lengths he's willing to go to make sure this happens. What can we really gather from this, or can we gather nothing from it?
Yeah, when the game first came out, I was just like, okay, whatever, I'm just gonna go kill these colossi, it's fine. But like playing it as an adult, you're like, resurrecting someone that's dead, like that's bound to be something. There's bound to be no good coming from that, because you just don't do that.
I mean, we've all seen
many iterations of film and video games that have showed that never goes a good way.
We've all seen Full Metal Alchemist. We know how bad that can turn out.
Yeah.
I guess I'll save my comments on that, specifically what you brought up, because there's an allegory here, not even allegory, a pretty explicit and direct influence that this game takes from mythological and biblical storytelling.
Let's talk about it.
But I want to wait, because it kind of covers literally every aspect of the game.
Okay.
I mean, so all right, we'll start a little bit of it. Dormin. What is Dormin spelled backwards?
Nimrod.
Nimrod, yes. Yeah. Nimrod, for those listening who don't know, is a biblical character who was, he's in the Bible, he's in the Quran, he's in a bunch of different ancient texts, believed in, depending on which interpretation / presentation of him, he's the king of like Akkad, or one of those Mesopotamian areas. He's believed to be responsible for the construction of the Tower of Babel, which obviously is the tower in the middle of the scene, the whole land that you're in, whatever the Forbidden Lands is. He in the biblical story, he's a great hunter who kills a bull with his bare hands, and was said to wear a crown with two bull horns, which obviously comes into play later on, and not only in this game but in Ico as well. There's also when it comes to the stories of Nimrod, they largely center around him being defiant of God because he was king before God came to rule the land, and there's a lot of different things.
That's
obviously
interesting.
Obviously Wander is defying the laws of the land. He's defying, it's a forbidden land, you're not supposed to go in. He's defying the laws of mortality by trying to revive this girl. Lots of different subtext there.
Yeah, that's so cool. I just took it literally as like his name meaning dormant, or like dormido, which in Spanish means like sleeping. And I thought you were just like resurrecting this dormant god. That's probably gonna do no good, but that's actually pretty interesting.
Another pretty explicit piece. So actually two pieces. So Nimrod, when he was killed, or when he died, his body was cut apart and spread across the world, just like Dormin's soul was trapped in a bunch of colossi across the world, and his wife would go on to have a virgin child, just like Mono would go and take the child and go up to the top of the tower. Which
Spoilers.
Well, that's why I said I wanted to save it for later. But
he did say that.
I'm just getting it all.
No, it's fine. That's fine. And you know what?
It's tough.
I'm really happy that you remembered to bring up that, because I had actually I had read about it, kind of forgot about it, didn't have it in the notes. I'm glad you remembered to bring it up, because I think it is really important to talk about the theming and the overall plot outline that this game sets up. And another thing that we'll circle back to this, but another thing I do want to mention is a lot of the influences and really a lot of the things surrounding this game are really mostly theoretical. Not much has really been confirmed by the creators.
It's very mythological in nature, and I think that's why I love it so much. It's not very, there's not much to it, which, just like a lot of ancient myths, and there's not much to it. It's very direct, very straightforward. And I'm into that sort of thing.
Yeah, there's themes of like dark and light. How many times have we seen that? But this one is extremely minimalistic, not only in its gameplay but in its storytelling, and I think that's what made it so effective, especially for that time.
And that was very intentional by Ueda, because he wanted players. He wanted people to come to their own conclusions. He didn't want to just confirm this and that. And that goes into another thing that I don't want to talk about quite yet. So
this is essentially the ultimate version of show don't tell, and I guess we'll get into it later, but this is, like, in my opinion, a way that video games can tell stories that no other medium can.
Yeah, I'll agree with that. So let's put a pin in all that. And let's talk about the ending that we are given, right? You go through the game, and something interesting to bring up about every time you kill a Colossus, and
you get change there from the original that I know for certain.
Two things. No, because it's still there in the remake, but it's less obvious, and I don't like that. That's something I do want to talk about later. But there's two things that you notice pretty much every time, not every time, but over time as you kill Colossi and continue through the game. Two things. One, when you're in that light and dark portal that's kind of like a loading screen to go back to the Shrine of Worship, you, over time and more progressively louder and clearer, you hear a woman's voice.
Yes.
And that every time you kill a Colossus, it becomes more and more clear that it's a woman's voice. And the other thing that happens is Wander starts to look a little more tired, a little more evil, let's
Vain.
say.
In the remake, he seems to get like more like these black veins. In the original,
Yeah.
it was very explicit and started happening much earlier, where
You
it
become more
wasn't even just
pale.
yeah, it wasn't even just his body though. His poncho started getting all ripped up. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was really explicit.
Um, so what? And also along the way, after you kill the 12th Colossus, that's 12 out of 16. You're treated to something we haven't. Oh, actually, even sooner than that, we're treated to a different type of cutscene. Every time you're back at the Shrine of Worship, Wander's laying there unconscious, and there's shadowy figures standing above him, one more than there was before, and I want to say maybe 6, 7 colossi in, you're treated to a different cutscene where you kind of see an archival, like filmic footage of Mono waking up on the bed that she's laying on and looking around. And then that cuts, and you go back to your regularly scheduled programming, for lack of better words. After the 12th Colossus, you get something even more different. You're treated to a cutscene outside the Forbidden Lands of a group of people, one of which is a shaman of a tribe, Lord Emon, as the other guys refer to him as, saying that they're getting closer. So that sets us up for the ending. After you kill the 16th Colossus, they reach that group, Lord Emon and his band. They arrive at the Shrine of Worship, and they witness the final statue get destroyed. And after that happens, and they approach Mono and see that she's there, they turn around, and there's Wander lying unconscious on the ground. And as he gets up, he kind of gets enveloped by darkness, and this is when you find out the big twists, which I'm happy. I never actually finished this game originally on PS2. The first time I beat it was on PS3. So that was about 6 years later. And I was really, really happy that this never really got spoiled for me. I don't think. I'm pretty sure this never got spoiled for me. But this is when you find out the twist. And the twist is Dormin was using you the whole time. And you killing those colossi, which were keeping him, like Jason said, broken into those pieces and keeping him at bay, defeating all 16 of those, set him free, resurrected him, and he takes control of Wander's body and becomes this big, hulking, demonic figure. To which the Lord Emon and company start to panic. Was this a surprising twist to you guys? Was this something... again, this is an old game, so like you have to really dig way back in the Wayback Machine. Is this something you guys saw coming? Is this something that was surprising to you? It was surprising to me in 2011.
Back then, no. Back then, yes, it was surprising. I was like, oh shit, what did I do? I'm over here trying to save this girl, and this is the result of it. But as playing it now, well, when I played it, the remake release in 2017, I was like, oh, it's less surprising. You understand like the consequences. Like you can see that he was menacing and kind of like using you. Maybe it's because I had played it already. I don't know, but I feel like now like it's just a little more obvious that would be the result.
Yeah, it's one of those things where like you play for the first time, it is a huge surprise, and you go back and play it again, you know what the ending is, but like you start to pick up on new things. You start to notice new things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember pretty distinctly, and this is one of the reasons I loved the game so much, playing it for the first time in 2005, was that the entire time I was genuinely caught off guard, because the entire time I had felt like I was playing some sort of pared down Zelda-esque action adventure game with, light puzzle elements. Save the girl, win the day, and then it turns on, just the flick of a switch, it turns into a Greek tragedy, and I dig that kind of shit. So it was one of the things that really made me fall in love with it, aside from, just the atmosphere, the aesthetic, and just everything, the entire picture.
It just totally subverts expectations.
In a good way.
Yeah, no, in the best way. It totally subverts what you're expecting to happen,
and it foreshadows it just enough without spoiling it for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very subtle. Like I'll be honest, like I didn't even notice Wander's overtime deterioration the first time. It like I mentioned, like when Delaila was talking about going back and replaying it, knowing it's like you go back, you know that, and you can pick up on new things, and you can realize looking at Wander over time that he really starts to go downhill. And something I wish I had more time to read this beforehand, but I'll just shout it out right now. Boss Fight Books, which publishes like personal critiques and analyses of games for individual games. They put one out years ago for Shadow of the Colossus by a man named Nick Sutner. I picked it up. I started reading it. It's really good so far. He brings up the fact that anytime you go to fight a Colossus, they're kind of just there. They're kind of either sleeping or resting or just walking around and living their lives, and you come in and you interrupt that.
Yeah.
And like that's something
in a sense you're a bad guy.
Right. This is a game where you don't really realize it maybe at first, but as time goes on, you kind of start to realize like you're the bad guy. You're the one that's coming in on these Colossi territory and you're fucking their shit up.
Yeah. And it's a forbidden land, literally. Yeah. And you're doing it for your own selfishness because you can't manage with grief, which I understand, but
and Delaila, you just touched on a really important point that goes back to what Mark is saying about Wander kind of just decaying over the course of the game. Was that another one of the big themes attached to this? And I didn't come up with this on my own. It's just analysis I've seen thrown around a lot, is that the game is all about hanging on, not being able to let go of loss, which is both represented physically in that you are hanging on to the Colossi as you're climbing them, but also not being able to let go of, a loved one that you lost.
It's a game about hanging on, quite literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
But I think what's so fascinating about this game is even seeing the ending and things play out, there's still so many questions. Even having a game like The Last Guardian come out and having a game like Ico before that can maybe or maybe not connect to this game, there's still so many questions of like why was Mono considered, why was this prophecy seeing her as someone that was dangerous enough where they had to put a girl down, like they killed her, right?
Yeah,
interesting theory about
she was seen as cursed.
Some might say that Dormin set it up from the beginning. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy because at the end, the curse comes to pass, even though she's brought back to life.
Right. Because in that case, why didn't they just kill both of them?
Right.
If they,
I think they presume. I think they just assume she was dead. I don't think she comes back until
they
leave.
She doesn't come back until everyone's gone, including. Yeah. Well, we'll talk about it right now. So yeah, Dormin is resurrected. I forgot you get a brief like opportunity to play as Dormin, which is like kind of another subversion. You're now playing as what's ostensibly a Colossus, which I think is cool had they not put you in such a tight space.
See, in the original, I think you were actually a little smaller because I remember it being so much easier to control.
It was, it is. It definitely was different playing the remake and finding it to be super cumbersome, and then booting it up, playing it through on PS2, and I was able to turn in like a fraction of the time.
And in the original, weren't you literally just like the original, like so in the original, the Colossus that you become, wasn't it just like the first one that you fought?
No, it was still it still looked like the same one in the remake. It was still pretty distinct.
Okay.
That big. Okay. It was just very black, almost translucent, horned like beast.
I more meant with like all the arms and shit and like the.
I mean,
but
in the sense that
you might be right.
In the sense that it's just a bipedal massive.
Yeah. I just remember
Colossus,
it being smaller and easier to get around.
I would agree with it, but I would agree with that. But I think it's smaller, but not noticeably smaller. You only think you only feel like he's smaller. I only feel like he's smaller because he's just easier to control in that tighter space. But that also might have just come down to how they implemented the controls for him in the remake. It might have just been
camera.
A little different. Yeah,
and the camera.
But point is that was something I totally forgotten about, and it's another subversion of the game where you're now in control of a Colossus. I wish there was more to do. I wish anything you did would actually do something, matter, because you can pound down on the ground, you can jump, you can breathe this blue fire, but it doesn't really do anything to anybody. Ultimately, those guys grab the sword and they get away.
Kill them all. Yeah, what if you could kill them all and Dormin wins?
Yeah, like you get like a secret ending or something. If you not that I think the game needs that.
No, I'm just shitting around. Yeah,
but like I feel like it's an opportunity you're given, and it's kind of there's nothing you can really do with it.
Like you get out and climb up the tower, and as Lord Emon's like he's about to throw the sword, like. I cast you away, you demon, and you just fucking grab him and throw him off the fucking tower.
But Emon and them get to the top of the tower, and Emon casts the ancient sword down into the pool at the bottom, ostensibly casting a spell that summons this whirlwind of light that starts sucking the darkness and Dormin / Wander into it. And once he gets consumed, that's it. We see them run across the bridge as it's crumbling. The really long bridge starts to completely fall apart. And once they get to the end of it, Emon just kind of reflects on the events and says, if Wander's still alive, if he could even still be alive in these lands, I hope one day he'll atone for what he's done.
Right.
And then we get cut back to the shrine. And what do we see?
Well, one, Dormin lived up to his word and actually resurrected the girl.
Yeah.
She's alive.
Mm-hmm.
And then she finds the horned baby.
Yeah. Well, first, let's talk about...
It's ostensibly Wander, because you can control the baby.
What?
You can make the baby like cry a little differently depending on like your controller if you like press buttons and move around.
Oh, I know you can. So you can always like another thing Ueda likes to do is he likes to give even in cutscenes he likes to give a little bit of control to the camera. So you can kind of.
It's not the camera; it's the actual character model.
That I didn't
and
know.
I believe that was in the original as well. So I always took that as that was Wander, and he's now.
See, I didn't know that to begin with.
He got what he wanted, but it's not as he foresaw it to be. Like
let's circle back to that in a moment. There's another thing that happens that I wanted to mention, because on the way to the 16th Colossus, you go over a bridge with Agro, and that bridge starts to crumble beneath you. And as it's crumbling, Agro flings you off.
Oh no, I hated that
and
part.
And seemingly dies.
Fuck that part.
Wait, did you just say Agro was a he? Because it's a she.
Did I say he? I'm sorry. I did mean she.
Yes, it's confirmed.
Yeah,
it's confirmed. It's a she.
Agro is a female horse. I'm sorry if I misgendered her horse. But she ostensibly dies, or I keep saying that. You think she dies. She doesn't.
Yeah.
Mono
I was
wakes
so
up
happy when I saw her.
And coming up the stairs, limping, clearly in pain, is Agro.
I spent this whole time trying to make this girl come alive, and then I see the horse alive next to her, and that's all I give a shit about. At that point.
I mean, it's an emotional scene. Even Wander, like he lets out a cry. He lets out a pretty pained cry that Agro is just fallen down into this chasm, presumably dead.
Yeah, that scene's really well executed too, in terms of the cinematography and the way, as Wander is standing up, you see the flash of lightning and it begins to rain, and that goes straight into the next or the final Colossus fight. And the music that plays throughout that entire fight.
Yeah, some of the Colossi do reuse some themes. This one is exclusive to this Colossus.
Yeah.
And it's very foreboding. It's very ominous. It's on a dark, stormy night. And
I guess we'll get into it talking about specific enemies, but I always found it a bit underwhelming, given that I never found the fight this last one particularly hard. It's much straightforward and easy.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when we get to the design portion of our conversation. But let's finish talking about the plot overall. So yeah, Agro, you find out, is alive, and you hear Mono hears a cry from the back of the shrine and goes to the pool of water, and in there's a little horned baby boy. And after that, it's kind of a hopeful ending, right? She picks him up, and they go up to the top of the shrine to the secret garden that you can actually get to if your stamina's high enough in the game.
The Garden of Eden.
And you see life. There's animals you don't see in the actual world. You see a fawn. You see a lot of doves that you only really see the doves at the shrine, even down where Mono is, but you see a ton of them up there.
Squirrel.
Yeah, there's
it's a whole Disney cabal, or should I say a Studio Ghibli cabal.
But it's a hopeful ending, right? Because you just get Lord Emon, like, if anyone can live in these lands, if he's still alive, I hope he one day atones for what he's done. And you see that there's life at the top of that shrine. The means to live is there, and that's kind of, I feel like that's kind of the note that they attempt to end on is that you can live here. All these animals have done it. We can too.
Oh man, all you need is dem fruits and lizards.
Yeah. Although it's kind of funny when you think about it, like that's the hopeful bit of that ending. Is going up to that garden.
Sugars in your proteins. That's it. That's all you need.
You go up in that shrine. You get this hopeful ending that they can live up there or whatever. If you climb up to that shrine in the game, if you have the stamina to do it and you get up there, there's fruit up there, and if you eat it, it actually depletes your health and stamina. It's poison fruit.
Whoop.
Great.
So, just a funny thing to think about. But
again, another reason it's the Garden of Eden, the fruit of knowledge.
So, talking through this plot, and that it's not a long plot. It's not a winding plot, but does this game, with what little it has, does it tell an effective and worthwhile story?
Oh yeah, one of the best stories in gaming.
Yeah, I think it's so simple that it leaves an open end, which, like, to be able to talk about this game in 2021 and still speculate of what's going on, and the amount of time that people have put into theories and figuring out secrets of this game.
We're going to talk about that.
Look at how much we've already talked about regarding, like, deep philosophical thematic elements. I mean, yes, they're broad strokes. They're not like, we're not talking about plot specific things like what's the philosophy behind what Joel did at the end of The Last of Us. Like, we're not talking about necessarily a specific scenario.
Yeah.
But like any good mythological tale, like, you're painting really broad strokes that can apply to just about any human experience, and a lot of it is portrayed through raw gameplay rather than dialogue or exposition.
With how little there is in this game, it still manages to evoke conversation. It still manages to get us talking about, okay, well, here's my theory. And like Jason, you've already brought up like a theory or two that I'd never even thought about, never even heard of before. And that's what they wanted to achieve. They wanted to achieve something that was left up to interpretation.
Yeah, it's literally the earlier example of video games as art. You know, it's like a painting. You can interpret it your own way. You can come up with theories about it. You can try and research about it, but at the end of the day, like, no one has answers. It's kind of just up for interpretation.
In my opinion, oh, sorry, I didn't realize there.
No, I was just gonna say, in many games to follow, I think maybe try to have that level of art in their video games. Some succeed, some don't.
Yeah,
I mean, like, as much as I love, sitting down and playing like a well-produced AAA game that presents a cinematic story that tries to be more like a movie, which is most AAA games nowadays.
Yeah.
I prefer this from a video game. Games that try to do what this game does, which is use the medium of video games, which have something that no other medium of storytelling does, interactivity, to convey a story, which this game does. And other games do too. But very few games actually utilize that in their storytelling. And there are very few creators, Kojima is one of them who has utilized this. And we could think of other ones, but for the sake of brevity.
Yeah.
And there was one other thing that I wanted to mention before we move into like gameplay and stuff like that, is the Colossi, the way they appear. Like, they're like these beasts, obviously they have hair on them, but they also look like temples or ancient structures or something like that.
Which
like
was intentional.
It was intentional. Okay.
Yeah. That was very intent. I'm glad you noticed that, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that was intended by Ueda in the design of each Colossus. To make that because they're a mesh of the level design and the enemy design. Yeah. And with a level, you're thinking of landscapes, and with enemies, you're thinking of enemies. So combining those two, like, some of them feel like part of the land. Some of them feel like buildings, and you're scaling them. And you have to find new and creative ways to do each one. That a lot of that went into the design of them. But
it's just. Yeah. No, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Finish.
I was gonna say, it's just interesting because despite this game being so minimal, even in the open world, like, it seems like there was life there at one point, because there's like that giant Colosseum where the third Colossus is, and like all these other structures that, I don't know, make me feel like there was something going on before all this shit went down, before it became forbidden.
It's very, and I'll try to keep my nerdiness down on this, because I'm a huge Tolkien fan, but it's very Lord of the Rings-esque, where at the time period that the Lord of the Rings takes place in Middle Earth, most of the great civilizations of Middle Earth have kind of receded and are kind of decaying and in ruin. Like, and that's something that's really well presented in the movies, how a lot of these kingdoms that were once vast empires have shrunk down, and great cities are, ruins of their former selves. And that's kind of something, even the color palette is pretty similar between the Lord of the Rings films and this game. How it's a beautiful world, but there's almost like a gray filter over everything. If you maybe it's not gray. I don't know if you guys understand kind of what I'm saying.
There's just like gray, black, and white, and that's it. Maybe some turquoise sometimes. That's it.
There's lots of there's another thing with Ueda's style is like oversaturated colors and lighting. Lots of like, bloom lighting. At times you'll leave a mountain pass and it'll just be nothing but light, because you're like your eyes would be adjusting, like Wander's kind of are, from going from a dark environment to a light environment. But his style is to just overwhelm you with bright light in places like that. Which I find to be very, very gorgeous and almost timeless. Like, this is a PS2 game. A lot of 3D games, especially like particularly from the PS1 generation, don't hold up well. I'll get into this rant little later, but like I think the PS2 version of the game is the one that will stand the test of time the longest.
Mm-hmm.
Because I just think that visual style, it's gorgeous. Even though it is a 3D game, and some of the models and some of the textures, maybe they don't hold up very well, but it's not really about that. It's about the art style, and a lot of it is also has to do with working with limitations, and you can find some of the most creative work out of limitations of hardware. I mean, look at Metal Gear. But we're getting a little ahead of ourselves. I want to circle back to a few things that we've brought up and gone past. I want to go back to some of them. The first thing is kind of like the connections to Eco. This game was originally supposed to be a sequel. And then it kind of morphed and was kind of confirmed by Ueda and the team as a prequel to Eco. And I've always felt that way since The Boy with Horns, because Eco, the boy you play as in Eco, is a boy with horns.
Yeah.
And now I don't necessarily know that Wander, when he is resurrected as a baby, I don't know necessarily that he grows up to be Eco, because Eco opens up, minor spoilers for Eco. Eco opens up with him being taken to a castle to be sacrificed by a group of people. And I'm not sure, and he's still pretty young, so I'm not sure in the span of maybe 9-10 years from where Shadow ends and Eco begins, that somehow they could have made their way back to civilization. Or if a civilization somehow begins in the Forbidden Lands.
Well, it would tie to them sacrificing another kid in Shadow of Colossus. The girl's a kid, I mean, she's not a baby, Eco was, but
Lord Iman's just like, oh shit, we need another sacrifice.
But it all comes down.
There's that asshole that we left in the Forbidden Land.
Well,
why don't we just go get that guy?
It all comes down to like the idea that these people are cursed, and I think the horns. We see Dormin as a full-bodied figure, and we see that he has horns. Obviously, horns are symbolic of curse.
Wait a minute. Yeah. Trico also has horns in The Last Guardian.
Yeah.
Huh.
So real quick, I haven't played The Last Guardian yet. It's another game I got when it came out, and I just never got around to it. There was a Last
Guardian Easter egg in
there was
in the remake.
There was. Yeah. But point being is that this was basically confirmed to be a prequel. Now, again, that's all up to interpretation. Is Wander Eco? Is he not? How far ahead before Eco does this take place? How do we get from point A to point B? It's all up for guessing. There are other connections that I find interesting. That the shadowy figures at the beginning and throughout the game, you fight shadowy figures that are very similar in Eco. They're your primary enemies that you fight. I
want to ask you guys a question about, because
sorry,
you see those three figures come up before you even kill any of the colossi.
Yeah.
And then after you kill each one, there are a bunch standing around. Now, at the end of the game, Dormin says specifically to Lord Iman, I'm taking the body of this warrior. So he's possessing the body to rejuvenate or revive himself, take some sort of physical form, whatever, what have you. Do you think that those shadowy figures are supposed to be like the spirits? Because you yourself become one of those shadowy figures at the very end when you're getting sucked into the whirlpool and you're trying to force your way back to Mono, but you keep getting sucked back. Do you think that those are supposed to be like the spirits or what have you of adventurers past that maybe failed or also fell into Dormin's trap, if you understand what I'm saying?
That's a good theory.
That was something, for sure. That was something I never thought about until this playthrough.
I think So
they just stand there and look at you. They don't do anything.
So I've always felt that I've always interpreted them as pieces of Dormin, right? Like you kill a Colossi, you free one of the 16 pieces of him that are scattered, and they're all standing.
He says that specifically, that the Colossi contain within them his fragments of his spirit.
No, he doesn't say that.
Yes, he does. At least in the remake, he does.
What, at the beginning of the game?
Not at the beginning.
Oh, okay. End. I thought you were suggesting at the beginning of the game he did.
At the end, he says to Lord Iman, "You split me amongst these Colossi to trap me."
Yeah. So I've always interpreted those as just pieces of him anxiously awaiting him to get up and go to the next one. That's always how I've looked at that. At the end, when Wander does become a shadowy figure, I've always just thought that was still Dormin possessing him, just still controlling him and losing a lot of his power to the pool of light. But that's a good point. Is those other because there are other figures before you go and attack the Colossi, and maybe those are other people that have just tried and failed and come to the land. I think that's a great way of looking at it. Or that was
just a hypothesis I came up with while I was playing in the weekend.
Maybe not even other people that have come to the land like to seek the same power, but we talked about how there's obviously remnants of a civilization there. What if Dormin is what wiped that civilization out?
Right.
And what if those are fallen? What if he contains the souls of the fallen? I mean, we already know he controls the souls of the dead. Maybe that's why, because he killed them all.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's dope.
Geez, like this is what this game does.
Yeah, we see now. Well, now we have to do Aiko, because the question I have probably leads into that. So feel free to
I want to beat Aiko too, because now I want to. Because Aiko is abstent. Well, actually, no. Yeah, no. Last Guardian is the end, but Aiko comes after this. So I want to see where Aiko goes after this. So now I kind of want to see the end of Aiko.
Because I'm curious if Aiko has a motherly figure, like in the way that Mono became that motherly figure for the Horn baby at the end of Shadow.
I don't want to talk. I don't want to bring up too much about it.
Okay, so we'll leave that for Aiko.
I just want to say, yeah, I love this game. I think I like Eco more. It's just a game it's kind of always resonated with me in a special way, because while this game does a lot for telling a great story through gameplay, and there's something to be said about how, I feel like there's two different types of gameplay. There's mechanical gameplay, which serves the player, and there's thematic gameplay, which serves the story, and this is very clearly thematic gameplay.
Thematic. Yeah, Ico's a very different game.
But this still feels, this game still feels like a video game, and Eco more feels like a moving work of art. And while it has, funnily has like more combat, I feel like there's more combat in Eco, just like general moment-to-moment combat. There's no HUD. So that to me it feels so much less video gamey for that reason, and all the better for it.
It's like a classic platformer, but turned into a work of art. Yeah,
it's like it's a puzzle adventure game, unlike any of it I've ever played. And yeah, I would love to do an episode on Eco one day. But yeah, I don't want to harp too much on the. No. I just there's one more thing that there's one more thing that I want to bring up that's kind of a connection to Eco in this game is in your ultimate reward for doing all of the hard time attacks in this game is a sword from Eco, which is another just like major connection. Oh, there's actually one more thing that I totally want to talk about regarding Eco in this game is on the PS2 and PS3, if you have an Eco save file, the crest on your horse's head changes to the eye in the logo for
cute.
Eco.
That's so cute.
Which
I love shit like that.
The remake just makes it an unlockable that you get for killing a certain amount of Colossi and time attacks, which I think is lame. But I also get there's no other way that they could have. Well, no, I disagree. There's probably some other way they could have found a way to make that unlockable, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But
yeah,
let's talk about another thing. We talked about there's clearly remnants of a civilization here. I want to talk about how, so we were given so little. I want to talk about the fact that for like a decade and a half, because this shit's probably still ongoing with fans, is how much the community that's rallied around this game has kind of filled in the blanks, which I find fucking fascinating, because I don't know that there's anything quite like this. I don't know that there's any other game to this level of dedication where fans have kind of come in and made their own stuff canon. The biggest example of which is like, there's like location names, which I think they have kind of come up with and made canon. The biggest example, though, is the names of Colossi.
Yeah, I was listening to, just leading up to this, the past few days, I've been listening to some podcasts regarding this game, just to get a feel for like how some other people feel about it. Looking back, now, what is it, 15 years, 16 years, whatever?
Yeah.
And people are referring to Colossi with names, and I didn't even realize they had names.
Yeah.
It's also interesting, just a side note, the language that's being spoken, it's not a real language.
Oh, that's another. I feel like Ueda's an auteur. Like, right? Like, he's on the level of Kojima, but he's put out a fraction of the game, so I feel like not many people talk about Ueda. But like, that's another one of his staples, are like fictional languages.
Yeah.
He uses these made up languages. Like, you could be forgiven as an English speaker, never speaking any other language. You could be forgiven for thinking that it's like Japanese, but it's not. It's totally made up. That's why it all has to be subtitled no matter what, because it's just all fictional. It's all a fictional language.
Yeah, nice. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, it's really fucking fascinating. But yeah, I found out from this book again, just to once again bring that up, I found out that, they had, like, in the game's code, like, obviously they had names for the Colossi. The original writer of the strategy guide started using those names in the guide, and he was actually asked to take them out because they weren't, to Ueda and the team, those were just reference names, but they're not the actual names of the Colossi. Mm-hmm. So they were just referred to as numbers. Colossus 1, Colossus 2.
Yeah.
And over time, the fan community that rallied around this game, there's like no clear pinpoint on where these names originated from, outside of, like, I think it was pinpointed to like some PlayStation forum thread where these names were decided upon for each Colossus, and those have become the canon names. That's how everyone refers to these Colossi.
Wow.
And I don't think there's any other example in video games like that, where the fans have kind of made this stuff canon just through sheer conversation. It's like headcanon. It's like headcanon on a widespread plane.
Right. It's that the old discussion of the will of the creator versus what do you call it?
I don't know, the will of the fan.
Something of the audience. I don't remember. Basically, the argument of what does it matter if the creator calls it canon if the audience perceives it one. You understand the gist of what I'm saying.
I gotcha. But yeah, I just really wanted to talk about that because I find it so interesting.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I also want to bring up, I vaguely remember this from a video that I may have seen a long time ago. And just from remembering like the culture around this game at the time, people had spent hours like hitting this, like what seemed to be a locked door for hours just to figure out if there was like a secret behind there, and like going to that garden that you guys were talking about, and then there was like one guy that finally discovered that none of it is actually part of the game, that people were just spending all this time, but he like broke the game and found out that there's actually no secrets, that we know everything already.
That might have been...
There were conspiracies on like GameFAQs and shit. I remember back in the day when like forums were still a thing.
Yeah.
Well, there's one prominent one prominent member of the community, Nomad Colossus, that was hammering away at this game for the better part, if not well over a decade, trying to find all of its secrets, to the point where there was, for a long time, people believed that there was a 17th hidden Colossus somewhere.
Yeah,
yes,
that's what I remember.
Yes,
yep.
People believed that there were Colossi that didn't get used in the game,
and that is true. It is pretty well documented that there were unused Colossi, but it was a popular belief that there was a 17th one actually hidden that everyone was looking for, like an actual one you could fight in the game.
And that's part of the genius of, some people would say that it's a clunky way of designing a game and it makes it hard to enjoy. I would say it's pretty genius because the game doesn't explain to you things like, picking up the silver lizard tails, getting the fruits and the shrines and what those do for you gameplay wise in terms of your health, your stamina, what have you. The game doesn't tell you these things explicitly. You kind of just have to discover them on your own. So that when you have a game like that, it engenders that kind of, quest for what more is there lying out there. That's part of the genius of that philosophy of design.
Yeah, you're brought to this very empty open world, and it's all on you to find what's hidden in it.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
And getting the you might not notice it on your first playthrough if you decide to do time attacks, like you can unlock like the fruit tree map, and that explicitly tells you like there's trees out there with fruit. Go eat them. They'll increase your health. That's like the first time the game actually tells you what they'll do. Or you might just notice, hey, there's an orange thing hanging from that tree. Can I shoot it down with my arrow? Oh yeah, what does it do? Oh, it increased my health? Holy shit. And then you go and find more of that shit. You start stopping at every tree, seeing if there's fruit there. And shooting it down so you can eat it, get a little health boost. It's not stuff that you really need. You can get through the entire game without it. The game increases your health and stamina after every Colossus, so you'll always have enough, but it makes it just ever slightly more easier.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really wanted to talk about the fan community because like I think that's so fucking cool. I think it's so fascinating, and yeah.
That's what I kind of miss about games not coming out so frequently, is that I feel like we don't have enough time to like dive into these games and come up with theories as hardcore. I mean, there are people that are so dedicated to a specific title that do that.
Yeah.
But I feel like there's the game industry is so oversaturated with video games that we're always moving on to the next thing. And I just kind of miss being able to take the time to just
even
dive
so,
I think the only game I can really think of in recent times, and I don't even know if it's really comparable, but the way that Bungie relies on the fan community to essentially tell Destiny's story, because throughout
Grimoire cards.
Yeah, because all of Destiny 1 it was told through Grimoire cards, and even in Destiny 2, like you still have to they still rely on the YouTube community to fucking tie everything together. Like nobody would know who anybody was if it wasn't for Destiny YouTubers.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's still not even really comparable.
It is in a way, right? Because like they rely on that stuff, but they still take that and they regurgitate it and canonize it. This is just like, here's what we got. Go nuts.
Yeah.
We're not going to put out any official resources that proves you right or wrong. Just you do whatever you want. Yeah. So I think we can and should move on to let's now once again go back to, we were talking about the meshing of level design and enemy design, and that is the Colossi.
Mm-hmm.
How did we feel like any of these were poorly designed? Were they all well designed? Was the meshing of these two design philosophies into one singular unique thing, was it effective? Did it ever not work?
The only Colossi that really felt out of place that I was stuck on for the longest time when I first played the game was the one that you have to get the torch. I was like, why do I need a torch all of a sudden? Was that the 11th one or something?
Yeah, it was somewhere after 10.
That was
I
number
think it
11.
might have been 11.
It was
Yeah.
number 11.
I love that fight actually. Especially after you break his armor and you just have to jump on his back and ride him around. But the that fight in particular, because you have to get into the crevice to get up and climb on and get the torch, it exposes some of things that back in the day I defended, but playing it now in 2021, I understand the criticisms more, and I guess we'll get to it. The camera in that fight, but amongst other things. But I mean, I really enjoyed the design of just about everyone except for honestly the last two. I think it's the last two. The Sentinel, the one with the sword.
Yeah.
Not because it's a bad design in and of itself, but because again, and we'll get to it, because of the camera and the controls, I would keep falling inexplicably, and I would have to keep fucking getting back up, having him stomp on the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I knew what to do. I had solved the puzzle easily early on.
That's the thing about a lot of the later Colossi is it almost feels like the ones you get, and I guess it makes sense, you know, as the game goes on, like you should want it and expect it to get harder. But I feel like with a lot of those later Colossi, that one, the final one, and I'd even say...
Well, the thing is, for me, 14 was my favorite. 14 is the one where you're climbing the towers, and it's knocking them down, and then you're jumping off them onto the next one. I felt like that was almost the epitome. It's not the big... the irony is that it's like the smallest Colossi, but the combination of enemy and level design, I feel like, was at its peak at that fight.
Mm-hmm.
Just the way you're literally going around that entire hidden temple and have to lead it through those towers into knocking down the platform onto itself.
Yeah.
It was just really good all around and a fun fight.
The point I just wanted to bring up is, like, I feel with a lot of those later Colossi, I do feel like you start to get overly punished for failure. This is a game about failure and picking yourself back up and going back at it again. Especially with Colossus 15, falling off of him is a fucking chore.
It's not even falling off of him. When I eventually got onto him, I was fine. Mm-hmm. It was fucking the platforming. Because
but that's what I mean, though.
How loose it. Yeah.
If you fall off of him, though, and I like that was happening for me quite a bit, especially in, oh my god, Hard Time Attack on PS3. We still got to get to my comparison discussion, but like he was the fucking him and Colossus 3 are my least favorite to fight Colossi.
Huh. Isn't Colossus 3 the most iconic?
I would argue the first one is, but I would say the second most iconic is definitely Colossus 3. But
3 is the one on the lake, with the circular thing on the lake,
with the big sword that he'll smash it down into the ground. Yeah. You are so punished for falling because you have to wait and kind of lure the Colossus back into position and rescale, not even in Colossus 15's case, not even just him, but the environment. And you scaling the environment is contingent on him, and him being a hulking, massive Colossus can take so much time and just get so frustrating when all you want to do is get up there and stab his head a couple times.
The worst is at the end of the fight, after you've hit his head a bunch of times and you need to get his hand. You just have to aggro him and get him to punch the ground. But I found, for some god-awful reason, for like 5 or 10 minutes, he would just keep trying to step on me. and I was just shooting arrows at him, and he wasn't punching the ground. And I'm like, I know what the fuck to do. Just punch the fucking ground.
What I ran into a bunch of times was I would get him to punch the ground, and then I'd go to jump onto his hand, and right when I'd get there, he'd very quickly move it away to get back up, and I would miss my chance to grab him, and I'd have to repeat that until I got it right. And that pissed me off so much.
Oh my
or
God.
again, the game's controls would it would snap you on to his hand in a weird way when you grabbed it.
And then you try to let go or move, and you just fall off. Yeah.
Yeah.
God, Colossus 15 fucking sucked.
But to your question, all of the colossi are approached very differently.
Yes.
Yeah.
You got the underwater ones, you got the ones that are super tall, you got some smaller ones that you ride, or some that like you have to wait till they knock down something, or some of them you have to be on aggro, some of them you don't. Some of them you have to use your bow and arrow. It's just they're all very unique.
Yeah. It's amazing.
There's no one Colossi that felt the same.
Aside from 14, I felt like the standouts, obviously, the sand snakes, both the flying one and the one where you have to shoot him in the eye so that he runs into the wall. Because you're riding on aggro, you got to shoot with the arrow, whether it's at the belly. Just some ones in particular. And the fucking Leviathan one. You're floating around underwater is another good one.
Yeah. For such a simple concept of you just climb and stab. 16 bosses, you just got to climb them and stab them, scale them, whatever. That's all you got to do. The fact that everyone was so varied and so different from the one that came before it. None of them felt too maybe some designs started to get a little similar at times, but in terms of visual design, I mean, but they still managed to keep it relatively different.
They would throw in like a mechanic, like his weak spot is armored, or you got to hit a different spot, like you would have to climb down to like his back instead of his head or something.
And once again, in typical Mark fashion, I'm gonna say that the best way to play this game is hard mode, because it adds extra sigils and adds that additional level of challenge. Like going back to Colossus 15, there's the sigil on his head and there's the sigil in his hand. Hard mode adds one right on the left front of his chest.
Cool.
That you have to kind of sneak down on and stab that, and then
he's got a man boob. He's got a man boob.
Yeah, it's on his it's right here on his man boob. But yeah, like on Colossus 2. The first quadrupedal one. There's the one sigil at his butt and the one on his head. Hard mode adds one on his left side.
That's cool. So all hard mode does is add an extra sigil.
Not always. Some of them they can't really do much extra with, like the eel. It's pretty much the same. It's just the electricity does more damage. Yeah. It's sometimes they're a little more aggressive, but overall, a lot of them do add an extra. The two smaller ones, Colossus 11 and Colossus 14. I like to call them the boar and the lion. That's kind of what they feel like to me. Those two, obviously, you can't add an extra sigil for, because they're so small. There's just the one on their back, but they do feel more aggressive. And they do definitely pack a bigger punch when they do hit you.
Oh, just another note, and I think this just goes into further my point and further the point you made, Mark, that when you have to rely on the Colossus to kind of do the mechanic, it got frustrating. The one where you had to lead it over the water spouted, whatever. The geyser.
I call him the turtle.
That one took a long time for me.
Because it's fucking hard to get him to. Yeah. It's already hard enough to get aggro to go where you want her, and then to lead him over it, and at the same time he's shooting shit at you half the time, so we won't even move. So that can get frustrating.
Yeah.
Speaking of trying to get aggro to go where you want her.
specifically designed not to. Yeah.
Yeah. Can we talk about? I've come back a little bit on this, but I still think Agro is like one of the worst video game horses, at least from a mechanical perspective.
See, I was the complete opposite. Where back in the day, I was huffing those Ueda farts, where because you remember back in the day on the press tour, Ueda would be like, "Look, we designed it specifically not to listen to you sometimes because we wanted it to be like a real horse."
Yeah.
And with the physics and the controls, just the way the game feels, he's like, "We wanted realistic physics. We wanted it to feel like the entire world was against you." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." So when people like I remember like listening to at one point Colin Moriarty on like Podcast Beyond. He talked about how much he fucking hated the game and how he only played it for a half an hour before never playing it again. And he specifically pointed out all those things. I was like, I usually like agree with Colin on a lot of shit, but I was like, oh god, I can't take that. I don't stand for that. But now, all these years later, not having played it since the PlayStation 2 era, playing it in 2021, 2 generations later, I see those criticisms as more legitimate than I did back in the day.
It's and at the time, I probably really appreciated Agro. Like I probably really appreciated the way she played. But yeah, when you're just trying to like, especially on Colossus 9, the turtle one, where you're like, okay, we got to get going, and that thing is about to fucking blast you.
Right.
You want the horse to fucking move.
You're just smashing triangle, kicking her over and over again, and then
just saying like, "Fucking go! We have to go!"
And sometimes she would turn when you don't want her to, and it was just things. Horse mechanics have gotten better, but honestly, this game started it. You know, it set it off.
And I appreciate what Ueda was trying to do. I appreciate the idea that like, yeah, she's like a real animal. She's not always gonna listen to you when you call her. It's like, oh yeah, that's really fucking cute. Except I want to fucking go. Let's go.
He had the same excuse for Last Guardian, actually.
Yeah.
The animal mechanics in that game very good and very realistic. Very frustrating.
Right, because animals can sometimes suck as much as we love them.
Yeah. Wait, quick question. What was your favorite Colossus?
Yeah, I did want
to know.
Thank you. I did mean to ask that question.
Are you asking me?
Yeah, you go first,
Everyone.
Jason. Go first.
I think I want to stick with 14, what I said before, because it was literally a synthesis of all the best parts of the design of the game, in my opinion. I mean, it's not even a big one; it's just one of the small ones.
Mm-hmm.
But the way that you're frantically jumping from tower to tower, it's just a fun fight that you don't even need to be constantly swaying back and forth on top of this massive beast. The beast is just chasing you and destroying the environment in the process, and you're managing to cling to the environment and use it to your advantage against it.
Yeah. Yeah, back in the day, my favorite was the iconic one, Gaius, because I just loved how tall he was. But now I think Avian, the bird, the 5th Colossi, is the most like just the design of that fight was just so beautiful. Like waiting for it to come scoop you up and grabbing it, and just the way like the physics work with the wind and you like trying to hang on while also, and it was one of the more simple ones because it had less sigils on it. But it just was so fun. I think that Avian between Avian and the snake one, the one in the desert, Phalanx. I have a list.
The flying one or the one in
the flying one? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. You know, I think I'm caught between 3. I don't know if I can pick one.
Yeah.
I do really like the flying one in the desert. That one just pisses me off when you sometimes. This has mostly been happening to me in the PS3 version, trying to jump from your horse onto its little wing flaps, so that you can mount it. That's the only real hiccup of that fight, is sometimes it can just be a little frustrating. But it's such a cool and epic fight Like and that's really cool about a lot of the Colossi in this game is you get to it and you look up and you're like, how the fuck am I gonna get up, like climb you, and figuring it out. It's been so long, and that's another thing about this game is like it's such a game you don't forget, right?
Yeah.
Like it's been years since I last played this game, and I boot up the remake and I flew through it because I remembered I would get to a Colossus and I'm like, oh, I remember what I have to do with you.
Yeah.
And like there's not really many forgettable moments in this game. And that could have to do with the fact that it's pretty short and it's just 16 boss fights, quote unquote, but like that to have such a concise experience that's unforgettable, I think speaks miles.
Yeah,
to the game. But yeah, I really like the 13th Colossus, the one that's flying in the desert. I think that one's fantastic. I also really like the bird Colossus number 5 a lot, for the reasons you already outlined. I found out from this book, again, Shadow of the Colossus boss fight books, go check it out. I found out from this book what Ueda's favorite Colossus is, and it's made me appreciate it a lot. It's one of my favorites. It's the first Colossus, because it's the first one you see, right? It's you don't know what a Colossus means. You don't know what a Colossus looks like unless you looked at the cover of the game. So I guess you know what a Colossus looks like. If you rented this game from Blockbuster where you just got a generic case, you were really surprised.
Well, there was a demo disc of just the first one, I believe.
Yeah. I played that demo. So, I played that demo probably more than I played the original PS2 release.
Yeah, I remember the demo.
I played the demo a ton, but that was the first Colossus, and that was what set the dressing for everyone to come after it. It's either it's gonna be like similar or bigger and worse. And another thing that I like, even before the Colossus, is the path to it. Kind of teaches you immediately before the Colossus itself everything you'll need to know about the game. Has you climb vines, has you jump over a gap, has you climb up a ledge, has you shimmy a ledge and jump across to another one, has you roll under a log. It teaches you every basic mechanic short of attacking just before it. And it does it in such a natural way. It's still, I think every version still gives you like some sort of control, like pop up that tells you like press this button to do this, but it doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't give you a gratuitous tutorial. It's very quick and it leads you right directly into your first fight and kind of just says, okay, you learned the basics. Good luck.
Yeah.
And yeah, but between the visual design of the Colossus and how the fight actually plays out, it being the first fight and an excellent tutorial, yeah, the first one's really, really fucking cool.
Yeah,
plus
definitely.
it's on the cover of the original game. How could you not like it?
Yeah, that's true.
It's the one you're most familiar with by default, unless you didn't play the original and you just got the remake. Colossus 3 is on the cover of the remake, but
oh, he is. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. I guess the next thing I want to talk about real quick is just the content the game presents to you outside of the 16 Colossi. We've already talked about some of this, the lizards, the fruits. Jason, you didn't know that there were time attacks that you could do?
I didn't remember it from the original.
Okay.
I knew that like they put it in the PS3 version.
No, they were always there.
No, I mean I just didn't know it was in the original.
Yeah. But yeah, there's time attacks. I found out, I'd never realized this was a thing until the remake, and I confirmed it's been there since the PS2 game. You can go back to the corpse of a Colossus, but by the time you go back to it, it's one with the land, which I think is really cool.
Right. And there are pictures of them in the credits.
Yeah. But if you kneel at one, you can enter what's called reminiscence mode and refight it with like an old sepia tone film grain over it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of
I
like
remember
remembering back to that fight, and you can replay and refight any Colossus, which I think is so fucking cool.
That is.
Right.
But on top of that, yeah, there's other content, but otherwise it's just kind of like an empty open world. Like, the replayability to me in this game is the same type as like Resident Evil games, where the challenge in going back, since it's mostly a puzzle game and the puzzles is what takes up most of the time you spend on that first playthrough. So playing the game over and over and over again is mostly to see how fast you can beat it now.
Right.
As in terms of additional content replayability, do you guys feel like it's enough? Do you feel like it's worth it?
I think to an extent, yeah. Like I can't see me replaying this game like every year or something like that. And but I think doing the time attacks, getting all the items, like I think there's like a parachute or something you can get. I never did them, but from what I know,
you can get like masks, cloaks. There is a parachute. You can get additional weapons, and normal and hard mode both have their own rewards. The remake is the first time where you can actually have all of them on a single save. Just because the way the save structure works on that, but
yeah, they did a lot of quality of life stuff on.
Yeah.
See, the funny thing is that back in the original, I never even I didn't do time attacks or anything like that. I would just play the game, have no problem playing it over again, just to see like the story, and obviously experience. I think experience the story is a better way of putting it. As we talked about. But I mean, yeah, like Delaila said, like this isn't something like Destiny. You just pick it up every day and jump on for like the core mechanics. It's like an experience. You sit down to play it for, a couple sittings and then put it away for a while. And then, hey, I remember this story. Let me experience this story.
Yeah. But for a game that's so minimal, the replayability is really high. Like it's in balance. Like it's so minimal, but yet you can replay it so many times and still enjoy it to a point. Because we know you, Mark, you're tired of it at this point. But like
I mean, it's
had
one
you
thing.
Like maybe space it out
but
more.
it's like imagine if you watch The Godfather like 6 or 7 times in the span of like a weekend. You're gonna get tired of The Godfather, even though it's one of the greatest movies ever. Like,
I mean, hell, let's think back to the Alien Isolation episode. They had Alien playing on TVs throughout the studio 24/7.
Yeah.
Right.
Although I could never get tired of Alien, but I can I can get tired of Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
But that's why you don't do what I'm doing. You don't play 3 different versions of the game like several times over.
Yeah.
You're
like,
not normal, Mark.
Yeah.
Let's just cut to the chase.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't even bother with the platinum because of what I saw it entailed. I was like, maybe another time. I mean, like I want to still love that game,
The remake plat I feel like isn't too bad. The PS3 one is a bitch and a half.
Mark, we're intervening to help you.
This episode.
You don't need to let the platinums rule your life.
Are
Mark.
you telling me this episode is secretly an intervention?
Yes.
All right. The next thing I want to talk about real quick is the music.
Oh God, it's so good.
One of my favorite soundtracks. Yet there's not that much actually when you think about it.
No, it's I want to introduce a new segment, which is does Mark own the soundtrack?
Oh, cool.
The answer,
of course, you have a vinyl, don't you?
I have it pre-ordered.
There's a vinyl to pre-order?
Not anymore. It's sold out.
Oh, fuck.
You're into vinyl, Delaila?
Yeah, actually, I have The Last of Us and the Ghost of Tsushima one.
Oh man, I didn't know that. Okay, I'll start letting you know, I guess, when records are coming on sale, because I buy way more vinyl than I can listen to. But yeah,
I would love that.
This soundtrack, it came out on vinyl a couple years ago, and it's been sold out and been going for hundreds of dollars on the secondhand market. It got brought back for a repress a couple months ago and sold out very quickly. So yeah, it's pre-ordered, but I did also buy it on CD last week because I've always loved it. I've always wanted it, and I finally pulled the trigger to have it on compact disc.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Yeah, there's a surprising amount of music in this game. Like more.
I think it's a bit what's the word? Deceptive, in that a lot of it is cut together
Yes.
because it activates when you're actually playing the game. You'll hear that kind of ominous theme as you're approaching a Colossus, sorry, and then once you get on it, it immediately cuts to like another theme,
For pretty
and
much
then when you kill
every
it,
Colossus fight, there's 3 different pieces of for
yeah,
most of them. There's 3 different pieces of music that will play during the fight alone, and then there's always the music at the end.
right.
And then there are also smaller.
For me, the most memorable is the cutscene music.
Yeah.
In the beginning and the end.
Yeah. And there are several tracks involved in those cutscenes. There are also shorter tracks that play at certain key moments. There's a deceptive amount of music in the game, is what I'm trying to say, and it's all fan-fucking-tastic.
And it's woven into the gameplay so beautifully.
Yeah. And if you're just running around the world, there's nothing. It's just the sound of the world.
Mm-hmm.
It's wind, it's water, it's birds. That's all you hear until you get to a Colossus. Then you'll hear music. It's the only time they play music is cutscenes and fights. And it's all fucking phenomenal. It's one of my favorite video game scores of all time.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
No doubt about it.
All right. I'm going to try to make this fast. I'm going to jump into my quick comparison of each version.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Since I'm fucking insane and played all 3 different versions of this game.
Thank you.
I'm just I'm just gonna say, if you've listened this far and you haven't played this game, shame on you. Go play the game and then listen to us talk about it. But if you're gonna play this game for the first time, it's the hardest one to get now. But play it on PS2.
I will say it's going to be a bit of a shocker because the control scheme on the PS2.
Yeah. It's definitely not modern. It's definitely an artsy fartsy PS2 game control scheme. But aesthetically, and the reason it's the hardest one is because it's PS2. It's a PS2 game.
It's
Came
inverted,
out in 2005.
right?
You can change that. It is
by
by
the
default.
PS2 version?
Yeah, but I'm talking about like triangle is to jump. I'm pretty sure
Yes.
X was to kick Agro.
Yes.
Or to get her to move.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure R2 wasn't the grab button.
It was R1.
I don't remember. It's R1. It was weird.
And circle was to raise your sword up to we didn't even talk about that. And the method of finding a Colossus is reflecting the sunlight off of your sword, and it points the rays
to the direction
convene in the direction of the Colossus. Which
Ghost of Tsushima definitely took a page out of that book.
Yeah, we're gonna talk about what this game inspired. Fucking this game inspired the hell out of Ghost of Tsushima in that regard. But it's such a creative way to give you a waypoint without giving you a waypoint. And like there's still a map, but it's like a map. It's like a sheet of fabric that just has these drawings on it. And over time, like there's clouds on there, drawn on there that get uncovered, and you see a Colossus symbol where you fought that Colossus. And like over time, that map like clears up a little bit, but it's still stylized to look like a fabric map, and it's so fucking cool. So yeah,
and the whole art style, even the designs of the Colossus. I don't know if either of you guys have seen Nausicaa or Castle in the Sky. If you remember the robots from the giant killer robot from Nausicaa at the end, or the robots in Castle in the Sky, even the castle itself, you can see that design directly there, and on the map, the drawings of everything. Like,
I hadn't even made that connection. Wow. Cool.
But yeah, the PS2 version's like the hardest one to get because it's older. You'd have to have a PS2. And ideally you'd be playing this on a CRT. I unfortunately don't have a CRT. I had to play it on a flat screen, but it only would have looked better on more classic hardware. But the way that game looks visually is so stunning, even though it is a 3D game from 2005. You know, a lot of people will claim that most of those don't hold up well. Not Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's fucking beautiful. To me, that is the best way to experience this game. The PS3 version does do a good job at remastering that and still making it look great. I feel like there was still more texture and asset pop in that version. And like, I'm going to get into a bit of a rant about that in a moment, but like the PS2 version is not innocent of that. Like, it very much still had like things popping in as you got closer to them, because that's a thing a lot of video games do. This is an open world running on PS2 hardware. It was tough to have everything rendered.
Hell, even the remake does.
That's what I'm going to talk about in a moment. So yeah, the PS3 version like does a pretty good remastering, but they did a really stupid thing where the PS3 version is the hardest version because they made Wander a lot less stable.
Mm-hmm.
He trips over everything.
That I do remember that. Holy shit! I thought it was just bad.
No, no. It's the reason why the plat on PS3 is so hard, because you go to do hard mode and hard time attack, and he trips on everything, and he gets unstable on everything, and you try to grip onto a Colossus, there's barely any room to breathe, because anything that the Colossus does, he loses his grip.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And you have to be like perfect on your positioning and grip and everything in order to even get a hit in, because he's just so unstable. The PS3 version, it looks really good. It does a really good job at remastering those PS2 visuals, but it's so fucking difficult because of them changing his stability.
Yeah.
So it's hard to recommend that over the PS2 version because of that reason. It's just a much harder game when it doesn't need to be, and that's kind of my issue with it. Mm-hmm. Here's the thing about the remake. I liked it. I didn't love it. Because when you sacrifice the original aesthetic and art style for more realistic visuals, while those realistic visuals are gorgeous, it loses a lot of essence. I
feel like it was brighter. Am I correct in that? I feel like it wasn't as muted as the original was.
See, I feel like it was more muted, but it had less range in the feeling it could convey in its environment, because it all just felt the same, right? It all just felt like mossy rocks and old rubble, and we never got quite the levels of like oversaturated lighting and bloom effects and everything that the original brought through in its world. It all just felt very drab because it was so much more realistic. Some of the skies did try to elicit that, but it's that loss of lighting. And even the sound design, you never feel nearly as lonely and isolated in the remake as you do in the original version of the game.
Wow. That's deep.
Yeah. I know. This is...
and I'm also like getting kind of context clues into why you guys feel so strongly about the game that I'm playing right now that we're going to do next, but we'll wait till the end of the episode. Yeah. But now it's all coming together in my head.
Because art design, art direction is so important, especially when you're trying to make an unconventional artistic game. And like, don't get me wrong, Blue Point, I love Blue Point. I love the hell out of Blue Point games. And I don't think this is a miss for them, and they clearly put in a lot of love into this game, but it lost a lot of its essence, and I don't necessarily feel like this game needed to be remade in the way it was.
I wonder if they were trying to bring in a newer audience, because I think it's harder for younger eyes to...
Yes. And that is something that was brought up to me in an outside conversation.
The cynical voice in my head says Sony was just saw an easy filler point in their release schedule, but
maybe I don't want to be that cynical about it. And like I said, I did like the remake. I just didn't love it. I never fully felt convinced that game needed to be remade the way it was. Gorgeous as it was, it never reached it never reached the feelings that the original PS2 version or even the PS3 version made me feel.
I feel that. How do you feel about the hair on the Colossus, on the Colossi?
I mean, it's
like,
always been meant to be like mossy fur.
Yeah.
And I feel like even the Colossi designs were very good still in the remake. Like
yeah.
there were very minimal changes they made in the remake. Some of the environments were changed. Obviously, there were much more realistic textures. Some of the Colossi,
particularly the rocks.
Yeah,
it felt like the rocks, like the cliff sides, the waterfall, the water looks beautiful. That was like the thing that stood out the most to me was the hard environments and the background, way in the background.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that bugged me the most, probably the most about the remake, is like Jason, you brought up that the remake does do this, and I said that the original does do this, is like texture and asset pop in, and as you get closer, things start to pop, and that was true of the original game, and that was true of the PS3 remaster, but in the remake, it happens so much more frequently. You get up to a patch of grass and more grass just kind of spawns in, and that bugged the shit out of me just because of how often it was happening. It felt like too much. They were trying to do too much with it, and it kind of got out of their hands.
Yeah, because that stuff, I don't, at least again, Mark, you'll have to confirm it. I don't remember there being like the individual blades of grass blowing in the wind. I just remember it being like a flat terrain that was green.
Yeah, it's pretty much. There is some grass. It's like
but it was like little like devil grass.
It's like sprouts, and it's just like it's like typical like PS2 era grass. It's just like a flat a flat asset piece of grass that's just like there on a pasture.
That was another thing that bothered me, and you'll have to confirm because maybe my memory's shot. But there are a lot of times when the game will force your horse to slow down, which I interpreted as the game is loading, so slow the fuck down. And I didn't remember it being like that in the original.
That's still kind of there in some points, yeah. In fact, I feel like it's worse in the PS2 and PS3 versions. Probably the worst. It's probably the worst in the PS3 version. Weirdly, where I'll get to a stretch where Agro should just be able to navigate it just fine, and she'll slow to a crawl. And it got so bad at one point, I actually got off my horse and just ran the rest of the way because she just wouldn't go fast enough.
Wow.
Right.
Another thing that I didn't realize was in the game before until the remake did it, and then I confirmed it was in the original version and the PS3 version. In like a forest or along some sort of like mountain path or anything like that, if you just let Agro go, she'll follow it on her own.
Yeah.
Which I think is awesome. I meant I could just like take my hands off the controller and just let her take me where I needed to go. I thought that was fantastic.
You're not actually controlling Agro when you use the stick. You're basically, I mean, you are, but you're only really pointing in a direction to go in, and you can just keep tapping triangle and she'll basically navigate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that I liked the long story short, I liked the remake. I feel like it didn't do it for me quite how I was hoping. I remember being really excited. Oh yeah. We talked about how Wander changes throughout the game, his physical appearance. It's so much less obvious in the remake because they just I feel like he had this constant baby face throughout the entire game that just like...
It doesn't happen until the finale when he gets stabbed. That he fully transforms. I mean, you get horns.
I could notice on his collarbone and that there were some dark veins starting to form, but not on his face, not on his general like outer skin that you could see very well.
You get horns like by I remember, I think it was like by Colossus 13 or 14. You start getting horns.
I don't know about that. Maybe I just haven't noticed. I thought the horns didn't show up until after the final Colossus.
I know. At least your skin like starts turning blue.
Yeah, that for sure. You start to get much more pale, and it's a much more obvious change. But yeah, something I do kind of want to say about the remake is it does add some pretty cool Easter eggs. Delaila brought up the one cave that has the barrel reference to The Last Guardian.
Yeah.
There's also
Jason's right. I just looked it up.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh.
He begins to grow it before the last Colossi, along with the deterioration.
Jesus.
But yes, go ahead.
I played so many times and I didn't even notice.
Probably really subtle.
Jesus fucking Christ.
That's dope.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's a really cool detail.
Like Punish Snake. Except less obvious.
Jesus.
They also added in the remake a hidden beach you can find all the way on the western side of the map. You can find this hidden beach that's a reference to Eco in a way that I won't talk too much about, because if we're going to do an episode on Eco, I definitely want to keep that close to the chest. But it's a very, very cool reference that I really loved and appreciated. Okay. Let's start to wrap up a bit. I want to talk a little bit about this game's legacy and its reception. A quick note about its legacy, I guess, is just like this is a game that one of the few video games that has been used in film in a really effective way. Jason, I think you've seen Reign Over Me, correct?
Yes, sir.
I wish I had the time to watch it, but I've read about how it's utilized in the movie.
Yeah, so essentially, and Delaila and I both touched on this before, talking about how this game, one of the big themes is grief and learning to let go. Just to give a plot synopsis for Reign Over Me, the film stars Adam Sandler and Don Cheadle. It's one of Adam Sandler's best movies. Adam Sandler plays a man who lost his entire family in 9/11. His wife and children were on one of the planes. And he basically develops a psychological disorder. Don Cheadle is an old friend who kind of comes in and tries to help him get over it. But one of the little like tics that Adam Sandler develops is he plays Shadow of the Colossus over and over again, like religiously. And that kind of plays into the theme of the movie, which is Adam Sandler getting over his grief.
Wow.
And I have seen the scene where him and Don Cheadle's character like bond over playing the game and learning how to get through it and whatnot. And it was a really, really sweet scene. It's definitely a movie that I want to watch. I wish I had the time to watch it prior to this recording, but
yeah, it's like what is it? Uncut Gems, which came out recently.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of those hard-hitting movies where Adam Sandler shows that
dude,
he can be a fucking actor.
Adam Sandler's best films are the ones where he's in more of a dramatic role. Uncut Gems was fucking awesome. All right, I don't want to talk. This isn't the Adam Sandler podcast, but I wanted to talk about Reign Over Me, because this is
you eat pieces of shit for breakfast.
This is a one, probably at least at the time, one of the most prominent, or probably the only prominent like time where a video game was used in a really positive and meaningful way to convey a story through film. And I really wanted to talk about that, because I think that's important, and I think it's special that was able to do that, and this was the game that it did it with.
Mm.
In such a meaningful way. I'll just ask it. I mean, this game has been lauded and praised for years. Does it deserve it?
Yeah, without a doubt.
The end of this conversation?
Yes and no.
Oh,
I knew it. I knew you were gonna.
Like I've been hinting at throughout this conversation. If you had asked me like 10, 15 years ago, I would have said yes all the way and been with Delaila. But playing it now, I just played the remake for the first time. Even with the remake largely fixes the control scheme so that it actually makes sense, especially in the modern age.
See, I don't feel like it does much to fix it. It just changes some of the button configurations.
It feels more intuitive. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, that's fair.
But that's not even like the main problems. The main problems are, obviously, we talked about it earlier, the horse AI. Yeah. The camera, which we didn't touch on, you're constantly fighting the camera in this game, and that's something that goes all the way back to the original.
Yeah.
especially in tight places,
And
especially in area in like we were talking about Colossus 15, where you have to climb within tight spaces, or in the other one where you have to get the stick fire. Just the physics system, how you're constantly the way the character feels moving around, even when you're not climbing a Colossus, holding on for dear life, it doesn't necessarily feel good sometimes when you're playing it. So as a if I'm trying to be as objective as I can, then in some aspects, yes, it's not the greatest game ever made, but at the same time, what it's doing on an artistic storytelling level, what it did for its time, the legacy it left behind, and how it's influenced gaming going forward. Yes. So that's why I say yes and no.
It's not one of the best games ever made, but it is one of the most important games ever made.
Yeah,
I guess that's a good way of putting it, yes.
for sure.
Due to how much it influenced to come after this game, I think maybe for that reason alone, like there's so many games we wouldn't have. Cory Barlog cited this game as a huge influence on God of War 2, and it was cited as an influence for God of War 3. It was I know Jason's going to roll his eyes at this one. We wouldn't have Breath of the Wild if it wasn't for Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
There's a lot of games that were superbly influenced by Shadow of the Colossus. I know you've got a puzzled look on your face, Jason. It was
I'm
cited.
trying to.
The parachute's the most obvious. The parachute and the horse, but whatever.
But
I'm trying to. I mean, I guess the horse, but yeah, I don't know. I can see
the. I mean, I would say the Divine Beasts are pretty.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The Divine Beasts as well.
They're very obvious. A very obvious comparison there. But yeah, like this. There's some aspects of this game that definitely don't hold up very well. I do think. Something I did mean to bring up about the remake, and two things that I will give it some credit for. Of the three versions, I feel like Wander feels the best to control in the remake, and that a lot of that has to do with it being a more modern version. So I like it's a pretty obvious plus in its corner. The other thing was it was really nice to play a version of the game in 60 frames per second.
Hey.
Yeah.
Usually I'm not one of those people, but like,
the game. I'm the same way where I don't usually dig it. I'm not like a PC game master race type guy, but it's definitely nice because back in the PS2 era, sorry, the game would chug, especially when you were on top of a giant, Colossus and you're swinging around.
Yeah, like all things considered, like the game had run at 30 frames both on PS2 and PS3. This game, the PS4 remake, obviously a lot of PS4 games are doing it. A lot of PS5 games are doing it, where there's a resolution and a performance mode. Going from 4K resolution down to 1080p resolution didn't really change much visually for me. It didn't really alter it and I have a brand new TV that I've been like, oh man, look at these graphics. Been all about that. It really didn't change much. So playing that at 60 frames was wonderful. But yeah, other than that, I would say play the original PS2 release and yeah, this game for the most part is definitely it's definitely a must play and is for the most part worthy of all the praise it gets. All right, is there anything else you guys want to bring up or mention before I go to the final question?
I want another game to be this concise. Like a modern game, a new IP, whatever. It's just so meditative and quiet and simple, yet open-ended and minimal, but strikes so much emotion and thoughts. I want a game to. I'm so tired of games just throwing in fluff and extra shit just to do it, just to create more content. I'm playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla right now, and I'm like, there's so much shit that could be cut out of this game, and it would be such a better game. I just miss I miss how concise games like that.
That's what I was thinking when you brought up Breath of the Wild. It was like Breath of the Wild has almost nothing, and it's like on the opposite scale when it comes to minimalist versus. But
it's still clearly influenced. Yeah.
I get what you're saying though, but I agree in the sense that there are definitely a lot of people in the games industry who would rather be making movies and therefore are trying to make video games like movies. Mm-hmm. I want video games to stop being, or at least trying to be like movies, and to start telling stories like this. And they don't even need to be minimalistic in the way that this game is necessarily, but and there are games we're seeing more and more, like, and we'll get to it, other games we might cover that are starting to do this, and I am overjoyed by that. But I want to see more and more games use the medium of gaming to its fullest extent, and the uniqueness of it to tell stories in the way that this one does. Yeah. So,
yeah.
Well, speaking of wanting to be like film, some film want to be like games. That's a bad segue.
Yeah, what was that?
there's been this has been in the works for a long time. A film adaptation of Shadow of the Colossus. It's been in development for so long. And this past year, we've seen a lot of long in development, like video game movies coming into fruition. You know, we're finally getting Uncharted. Sonic the Hedgehog came out and was actually really good. Can this game work as a film? Do you think it could be pulled off?
No.
I feel like the gameplay. The only movie that I can think of that maybe captures the essence of what this game captures is Castaway, where it's like so quiet and there's not much going on, but it tells so much. I just don't see films nowadays doing that and being well praised.
Well, you would have to have Wander, Wander would have to talk a lot, but talking to Agro, but Wander not really talking at all, and almost. I mean, Wander's not really a player insert, but it just, I can't see any way of it working. And when was the last time we heard about this?
Yeah, I forgot about it for sure.
This was like, I'm pretty sure this died a long time ago.
The last time there was an update that I can find, it was 2014.
Damn.
Yeah, this isn't gonna happen.
It's possible it might not, but as far as I know, it hasn't been canceled, so who knows? For the record, I agree. I think, I mean, we could just stop right at the fact that it's a fictional language.
Right.
Are we going to have everyone speaking gibberish, or are we going to translate it all to English and just make it lose even that much of its soul?
The minute you do that, you lose so much of the mythological aspect of it.
Right. But even more than that, like, how do you filmify fighting 16 boss fights? Even if you condense that down, you can't just have it be one. It has to be several. But how do you make that into an interesting film in a game where very little conversation and talking, very little really even noise happens? I don't really see it working in a way that
the only way it works. The only way it works is if you completely change the story to where, like you said, Mark, it's just a story of a man and his horse chasing down one giant colossus.
And you know what? Like, that's still an adaptation, and maybe that's the only way the movie can work.
It's the only way, like, as a writer, that's the only way I could think about going about it. And it would be for completely different reasons. Maybe not completely different. You could still have the dead girl and certain elements, but like the stolen ancient sword and all this shit. But like, it there's no reason to call it Shadow of the Colossus other than marketing reasons.
Yeah.
And too often movies like make things so obvious. Like they're gonna make it clear that the relationship between Mono and Wander is a sexual one,
which
versus,
we don't know.
Which we don't know.
We don't know.
And it doesn't even matter. Yeah.
It could have been a sister. He could just be seeking justice. He might not even really know her. He might just. It seems like he had some kind of angry. He was not on good terms with Lord Iman, so he might not have even known.
He stole the sword and left and went to a land that he was told never to go to. Yeah, but like you're all right. Like for all we like, you can deduce that maybe there was some sort of romantic or familial relationship by the fact of how far was he willing to go to revive her, to resurrect her.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you wouldn't just do that for a stranger.
Yeah.
But you're right. Like, they would make that motivation obvious, and that's not what the game's about. The game's not about telling you anything. It's not about the obvious answer. It's about putting the pieces together in a way you see fit, in a way you are happy with, in a way that you want to see it. And I don't. This game or this movie would have to change a lot, and at that point, why call it Shadow of the Colossus?
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It's to cash in on the name.
Yeah.
So we'll see if any news even comes out of it. It's been a long time. It's floated around to several different directors and pretty much gone nowhere for over a decade now. So who knows? But I wanted to talk about it, bring it up, and see what you guys thought. All right, we ready to wrap up?
Yes.
Delaila, what you doing?
I've been streaming a game that we're gonna be doing next.
What's that?
Nier Automata.
Fuck yeah!
Woo! Yep.
Yes, I've beaten it once, and I'm going through it a second time on twitch.tv/assassina_san, and also archiving it on YouTube, edited down, so you don't hear me talking to the chat. What
I'll say real quick. Sorry to interrupt you. I reap the spoils, monthly Spoilercast. If you're a long-time listener, that's great. If you listen this far to find out what our next game's going to be, because you're going to play it, I just have a rule that you need to follow for the next episode. Otherwise, we're going to spoil more than you've probably played. Make sure if you play Nier Automata, you get endings A, B, C, D, and E. That is the main story of that game. All 5 of those endings. It's fascinating. It's so interesting. It sounds weird. It sounds odd, but trust me, that is the full story.
It sounds daunting, but it's not as daunting. You're not like playing the entire game 5 times. All I'll say.
I can say I'm in the middle of my second, and I agree with what they're saying. I see why this is happening. There's a purpose.
Yeah.
And
Delaila said she's on her second playthrough, but is it really your second playthrough, or is it all part of the first?
Right.
All I'll say, please, if you're gonna play Nier Automata and join us next month, endings A through E, please. Delaila, what else are you doing?
Nope, that's it. Just Twitch. I'm streaming a bunch, playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I did the Outriders demo. I've just been doing a lot of stuff, reacting to conferences on YouTube, like all kinds of stuff more frequently now, because I quit my job. So poke around.
But you found a new one, and that is youtube.com/assassina-san.
Yes.
Is that what it is on YouTube? Is it -san?
Yeah,
Okay.
It is dash. Yeah.
Okay.
Assassina. So it's Assassina-san with either an underscore or a dash or a space, and you'll find it.
So
I was just in my bedroom crying all week because Rest in Peace Anthem.
Oh God.
We saw you too soon. I'm just kidding. You were gone too soon.
Give me a fucking break.
You broke my heart, BioWare.
I'm gonna try to float it out there. I'm working on something. I'm not ready to talk about it. I don't remember if I said this at the end of the last episode, but I'm gonna make it a fucking goal by the time next episode goes up to have this fucking ready to share.
Yeah.
Putting it out there. Okay. You can if you liked this episode, if you like this show, please, if you listen to it on YouTube, give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a comment. Let us know what you like. Let us know what you didn't like. Tell us what your favorite Colossus is.
Yeah.
By the way, I got to rate this game.
Oh, shit. God damn it.
Well, before you do that, if you're not giving us 5 stars because you listen every episode and you just haven't gotten around to it, just do it this one because of Mark's work into playing the game on all different platforms. Like, at least for that, just give us a 5 stars.
It's like it's like a pity rating. Like, just.
Oh, this guy is so sad. He's so depressing. 5 stars.
Come on, we're trying to help intervene with his platinum trophy addiction. He needs some support. Come on, guys.
PlayStation 2 doesn't have trophies, and I still played that. This has gone further than trophies.
You put a lot of work into this episode for sure.
Yes.
But yes, your rating.
My rating would be, again, despite all of the issues with the gameplay, a lot of which actually I think is because of this is an old game. We have to remember this is 16 years old. I would still give it 9 silver tails out of 10.
Boom! Is that your highest rating?
I believe so.
Damn!
Yeah.
You heard it here first, folks. Kwasnicki Rating, 9 lizard tails out of 10.
Nice.
Because even despite all of that stuff that doesn't necessarily stand the test of time, the experience as a whole when it comes together does. So I still had fun despite all that. There would be moments when I might get frustrated, but I would get pulled right back in.
Yeah.
Cool.
Word up.
All right, back to the outro stuff. Sorry. I forgot some stuff there and we needed to circle back. If you listen to us on YouTube, like, subscribe, share, leave us a comment, tell us your favorite Colossus, whatever. Yeah, if you listen to us on Apple Podcasts, please rate and review, 5 stars preferred. Thank you, Delaila, for the admiration of all the work I put into this.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Definitely share the show. If you have a friend that really likes this game, we'd really appreciate you sharing the episode with them. And yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Nibelheimian. You can follow Delaila on Twitter at Assassina_Sand. You can follow Jason on Twitter at SolidQuas, but don't follow him. He does nothing.
I do a lot of things.
Just not on Twitter.
I sit in my bedroom and I cry when BioWare cancels things.
And we'll see you next month for Nier Automata.
I don't, folks. I don't give a fuck about Anthem.
Yeah, we know. No one does.
Outriders all the way.
No one gives a fuck about Anthem. Jesus Christ.
I liked it, but I don't care.
The gameplay was very fun. It just lacked other stuff. Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll see you next month. Not for Anthem, but for Nier Automata. Thanks for listening.
Yorha all the way.